Okay, Jeff. What happened with Islam? Is that an easy question or is that a hard question?
I think it is. I think the Australian Commission put out a statement last night saying there's no credible evidence of him violating any of their rules.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think I'd leave it at that.
Do you think it brings up a bigger issue with IVs? And you just cleared it up for the fighters. What's the situation with IVs?
Absolutely. So unfortunately, it's not an easy thing to explain. It's a little bit complicated. There's multiple layers. Let's start with the UFC USADA rules. So in 2019, we manipulated our rules slightly to allow IV use if a medical situation is diagnosed by a physician and the IV was administered by a medical professional, nurse, EMT, or a doctor. The reason we did that is we were running into instances where fighters were out of competition, they didn't have a fight scheduled or were well out from their fight, and got the flu. Went to the doctor's office and the doctor says, hey, you're really dehydrated. I think a bag or two of IV would benefit you. In the old days, you couldn't do that. You'd have to actually go admit yourself to a hospital, and that's changing a $50 copay and potentially thousands of dollars. So that's why we changed the rule for a medical diagnosis and administered by a medical professional. However, when it comes to fights, when it comes to fight weeks especially, the rules are two-tiered. There's the UFC USADA rules, and there's also the commission rules. And without exception, every single commission where we go fight would require specific permission from that commission and their doctors specifically to allow an IV use. And what I just told the fighters is there's absolutely no guarantee. In fact, it's probably likely that the commission will be pulling the fight if you have a diagnosed medical condition that requires an IV. Going back to Islam and Perth, the Western Australia Combat Commission, they have a specific rule that IVs are banned completely for rehydration purposes. So it wouldn't matter the volume, wouldn't matter if there was a medical professional involved. Perth bans those IVs. But again, they put out a statement last night that they had no credible evidence of an IV being administered.
And so where did it come from? It came from there was a bruise on his arm?
Yeah,
I
think there was some photos floating around.
Yeah.
What I don't think a lot of people realize, especially the Australian athletes, because they weren't subject to this, but all non-Australian athletes that week gave a blood draw on Wednesday as part of their pre-fight physical. And I think if you look, at pictures thereafter, you saw a small Band-Aid, on the arm. And then as that day progressed, Wednesday and Thursday, the bruising grew from that exact same spot.
I would imagine too, if a fighter's cutting weight, more likely to bruise maybe for something like that?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but you mentioned cutting weight, and the idea of a Wednesday or a Thursday, a fight week, of getting an IV is contrary to everything these fighters are trying to do.
Yeah.
You're dropping sodium, that last day or two in order to drop that water, and a bag of, saline, is probably going to put you in a position where you're unable to cut that water weight. It's not the time you'd be using an IV.
I feel like you and your department, you and Donna and everybody under you do such an exceptional job of explaining things. Only for people like me, I try not to be this, but for the media world to take something and run against it. So I appreciate you being friendly to me, since I'm the enemy that always lets rumors spiral out of control. But honestly, how do you fight that? You're fighting that constantly of
absolutely.
What's truth, what is in headlines, and what actually happened.
Absolutely. The thing, and we did this from the get-go, is this program is as transparent as you can get. What other professional sport, can you go online and read every single rule for an anti-doping program? What other professional sport can you go online and see what athletes are being tested when? There's literally nothing that's being hidden here. And as you saw here today, all an athlete or a coach or support would have to do to find out the answer is just ask the question. And we pride ourselves also on media. We're not hiding behind anything here. If there's issues, I've regularly been out in front of a camera or a mic explaining what the issue is. So there's nothing going on, in back rooms or anything. Everything's out front, both with the rules and what we're doing here.
They made a documentary about you.
Which one?
Well, the 25-year thing.
Yeah. Yep.
It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was cool. Yeah,
and they showed how you know how to shoot a gun. So you really better be on your P's and Q's.
That's right. I was My old days, I was an accountant with a gun. That was actually the hiring motto for the IRS criminal investigation where I worked. I was in college, I was an accounting major, wasn't sure if I wanted to be a CPA, and went to a job fair, and the headline was "Be an accountant with a gun." I'm like, hell yeah, that's something that I can get behind right there.
So you like that? Like, do you shoot? Like, you don't need to now.
Yeah, not as, for 23 years, it was mandatory. I'd go shoot every quarter, all day long. My fingers would be sore from loading up magazines. So in the 7 to 8 years since I've left, no, I haven't shot all that much.
Behind.
Don't miss it so much.
Yeah. What do you think the next bastion is of what you guys are working on? Because things are always evolving.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the main thing we're working on in our program is to make this program easier for our athletes, to make it more convenient, because we say this all the time. And this is the reason we give out these, 50 jackets or 25 shirts, and we've actually got some 75 tests coming up now. It is a tremendous burden on the athlete to report where you're going to be every day of the year so that USADA can find and test you. I mean, that's a big responsibility, and it just takes one day to forget to update that. And so we're constantly challenged with athletes we know aren't trying to cheat or break a rule with staying on top of where they are. What we really want to do is, through technology, make that more convenient to the athlete, where they literally don't even have to think about it. We piloted a program a few years ago with GPS that athletes could choose to opt into that program, and many said, I don't care if you know where USADA, if you know where I am 24/7.
Yeah.
If I don't have to, think about this, come follow me. It didn't work out exactly, but we're pushing them for something along that standard, so that the athlete has less and less responsibility and kind of not think about things.
What about like a microchip, like a dog?
Yeah. It's interesting. I think the holy grail of anti-doping would be a wearable device that absorbs bodily fluid, sweat. And that the thought is everything that you ingest or exposed to gets excreted out eventually in your sweat or your urine, so that this device, tamper-proof, you take it off once every month or two, and we'll be able to chronicle literally everything that you put in yourself. That would be the holy grail, but I don't think we're there yet.
But as a fellow human being who lived before the internet, does that freak you out a little bit at the same time?
Well, I mean, what freaks me out is the level of detection that the labs that we use can get down to.
Yeah.
And I just told the card here, but it's, the picogram word is in the news, in years past, but it's 1 part per trillion. If I laid 1 trillion of something out on the floor here, and 1 of those trillion was a prohibited substance, the labs that we use can detect that. So the best way to kind of conceptualize that and get your mind around it, Olympic-sized swimming pool, so 50 meters by 25, 10 meters deep, 1 single grain of salt in that pool, 1 grain, dispersed overnight. USADA comes the next morning, gets a cup of that water, and they can detect that 1 grain of salt. And it's fantastic in terms of extending, the detection times if an athlete were to use something. But the issue that it presents to us is a lot of athletes are being caught up in this that aren't intentionally trying to cheat, that used, a contaminated supplement, that ate some contaminated meat for a certain country. It becomes an issue, and I'd say, Donna and I, more than half of our time spent on this program is spent on cases where we believe the athlete didn't intentionally do anything. It's a huge challenge.
What would you say are the chances, to put it in layman's terms, an everyday person that goes to the gym, maybe they take a few sports supplements, protein shakes, eat a normal diet? Like, what are the chances that they would fail a USADA drug
very
test?
high. We've often talked about this, and we should. We thought, let's test all the UFC employees.
Like, I'd fail one right now.
Probably. These supplements, and I recommend this to the general consumer, non-athlete too. Dietary supplements in this country and other countries throughout the world, there's no pre-market government review. So
not FDA approved.
Not FDA approved. Food has pre-market review. Supplements don't. You and I can go out back and dig some dirt up underneath a tree, put it in a bottle, and go right to GNC and put it on the shelves. It's not until after it's harmed a consumer that the government gets involved with supplements. So the things that all of us are taking, if we're taking non-tested, non-certified supplements, you're subject to all kinds of contaminants. USADA maintains a website called the High Risk List, where they list supplements that they found were contaminated, and there's hundreds of them on there, constantly being added every day.
You feel like you could come up with like some mega money-making supplement because you just know like how it goes?
That I don't know. There's a lot of people
Marketing,
in the industry. Yeah, it's a lot of marketing, and who you get in the magazine picture or supplement
Which
labels.
is also a funny conversation for its own.
What's that?
Well, sometimes they take the before and after photos like an hour apart.
Exactly. Different lighting,
Little
different
spray paint, little
tanning,
spray tan.
cream. Exactly.
Awesome, Jeff. What are you, like 6'10"?
6'7".
So like you look down on all those people that cheat.
Yeah, I mean, look, in a program like this, where again we're so transparent. I mean, literally and figuratively, I guess you could say. But
Yeah.
On
you got the joke.
The little side. Yeah, I mean, all of our rules are publicly posted. I mean, we have one of the most well-publicized programs in sports. Those UFC fighters that are trying to break the rules despite, our program and the comprehensiveness of it, I really have no sympathy for. But on the other side, those that get caught up in it, that weren't trying to do something and innocently took a contaminated product, I do have sympathy for, and we're there for them to support them and try to figure out the answers.
Your phone's like going off like crazy.
That's all day long with me. So
is that all like every time it rings somebody cheated?
No, it's pretty much every time it rings, it's somebody with a question about the program.
God bless you, Jeff.
That was our boss.
Thanks for the time on this one,
Fitz.
man.
All right, my man.
Thank you.
Anytime.